last but not least session dedicated to climate tech. This is a time of highlighting the two nominees, the Climate Tech Awards. For this exclusive session, the last session of the Carbon Pricing Conference during these 2 days, the 2 and the 3 June, here in Paris, in live stream. We are going to co-design it with two key persons for this edition, this first edition of the Climate Tech Awards. And for this, I got the great pleasure to synchronize 3 time zones from US, from Europe here, and from Asia. And just to let the floor and to welcome Caroline Venza, my co-chair of this special and first edition of Climate Tech Awards. Caroline, you are the founder and CEO of Mission Control Communication, a communication firm based in US, in particular in California. Yes, very pleased to have you, Caroline, and to let you introduce you better.
Thanks so much, Fabrice, for having me. And it's nice to meet everyone. It's been great to listen to the conversations that have been happening over the last 2 days. And really exciting to be joining for this segment. There have been a lot of great companies that are making progress towards a cleaner world. And it's been very interesting to see the different business models. And so perhaps I'll give a little bit of background on what our company does and what I do. I've been focused and working in clean energy for over 20 years, based here in Silicon Valley and California. We've had the opportunity to work with many early stage companies that are working in many different sectors, from clean energy and energy generation, from solar and wind and hydro, as well as the electrification of essentially everything, from grids to mobility, and now we see into aviation and aerospace, and as well as sustainable infrastructure and many aspects that are moving towards a greener world. Our focus is to really work with early stage companies that are looking to prove their business models and then to seek investment, and as they grow, attract more capital, more customers, partnerships. And so we're looking forward today to speaking with the startups that are part of the segment here and giving some feedback and encouragement and some advice on how they can grow and scale their companies.
That Silicon Valley is a pioneer for everyone on many fields. When it comes to clean tech, climate tech today, I would like probably you, Caroline, a question before introducing our other panelists and other partner for the jury member. Do you think that the valley, as we call it, the valley is, with the beautiful screen behind you, is on the top front of the innovation when it comes to climate tech? Not only about the mindset, but also because in California, we know by the news that the weather could be in trouble, and the reality and the feeling of what climate change could produce and the direct impact, people who live there probably have a better understood than in other places, even in US also, but in other places in the world. Do you think that this combination of these two pieces could push again the valley in the forefront of the innovation when it comes to climate tech?
I think so. For the last 20 years, you're right, Silicon Valley has really been at the forefront of clean energy and climate tech. And certainly California is, along with New York, one of the most progressive states in the United States. So right now, California leads the nation in the most aggressive emission targets and is really driving a lot of policy and a lot of technology. And the investors here are very adept at supporting those kind of initiatives. And so I would say that when you look at Europe, which has very strict standards when it comes to climate and emissions, California is probably on par with Europe. Now, Silicon Valley has been the home to many of these early stage companies and segments, but I will say that our firm is also seeing much growth as these new Silicon Valleys emerge around the world. So I think every country has an epicenter where there is a lot of innovation and activity and action, progressive action on policy and regulatory initiatives. And so it's really great to see, for instance, in London and Paris, in Germany, even in Brazil, and some of the other countries in Asia are really making some really huge strides forward in climate tech, and that's very encouraging. But I would say Silicon Valley, we're now seeing the next wave of climate tech as the administration here has changed. It's a really great time to be moving forward, and now we see real global activity. So as you noted when we first spoke about this event, Fabrice, now is the time to start putting the promises into action. And so it's great to be a part of this today.
Also the mindset. And when it comes to the bridge, I just have Sydney Lobo also, jury member of this first edition of the Climate Tech Awards. I would like, to make the bridge now to Asia. Yes, please, Sydney, just introduce yourself.
Thanks, Fabrice. Hi, Caroline. How are you? Hope all things are well. Yeah. So I've been in the energy space for the past 25 years or so. Been in the hydrocarbon sector first, so worked right from a gas station to oil and gas exploration, the entire hydrocarbon chain, and then in the utility or in electricity or utility space. And over my entire corporate space, I've always started out in the environment and then moved into sustainability and then kind of graduated into the clean tech space. I was looking into the R&D and development of new clean tech energy, looking at new technologies and trying to indigenize them and bring them into the market, commercialize them. So I've been not only developing myself, but also working with new firms. In October 2020, it so happened that I've finally realized that the corporate world is a different atmosphere altogether. The startup world, or those are the guys who've got the passion, they want to do things, and they have the energy as well. So I thought might as well get out of the corporate space and work and mentor, startups and advise them on how they could look at different aspects and get into commercializing their technologies as quickly as possible, because time is running out, and relying on the corporate world is something which one would like to, but the action lies in the startups who are, who've got that fire in the belly to actually do things. And I thought might as well utilize my experience and knowledge to guide them, mentor them, so that things could come to light on the ground much faster than whatever it would happen in the normal course of time. So that's my background, and I'm enjoying myself working with these startups, and it's fun.
We're going to consolidate now the bridge that we just set in the first layer of the scheme we are going to design. Just to for the audience to share with you that we are very pleased to have an honorary president of the special edition, the first edition of the Climate Tech Awards. The honorary president of this is only Philippe Croison. Philippe Croizon, he is an incredible person. Really, not only incredible by his personality, by also the project he has at his track records and the project he has in the future, on the near future. Philippe Croizon, he is very impressive. He has drive the limits of the humanity, or the limit of, how can we say, the person to a very, very deep resilience. Now today, Philippe is very an important consultant and coach for organization to inspire from resilience asset to also engaging people, engaging teams to work together, and also to drive forces when they have to make line moves. But before having this exclusive interview with Philippe Croizon, we are going first to have a round of talks to go deeper when it comes with climate techs. I'm going to be back to you, Caroline. Do you think that today we are really in a new wave of clean or climate tech, or it could be another bubble, in fact? It's a challenging question, or wait, what could be your point of view of it? I do believe that it's not a bubble, it's just the task we have to do for everyone and everywhere, but what could be your input of it?
I agree. Well, when you see what's happened, excuse me, with the super majors like Exxon and Shell, where we're headed, and I don't think we're in a bubble. Every country in the world has now made commitments, and that was not the case before. And I think we're at a very different stage from a technology maturation standpoint. So these technologies, many of them, including solar and wind and some of these generation technologies, they've already been proven, over the last 2 decades. And we now see those projects are no longer pilots. They are getting commercial adoption all over the world at a very large scale. And now in this new wave, I think you're seeing technologies that are building on top of that. So we needed that base of energy, and that includes energy storage. And now what can happen is all the growth that we're seeing in new sectors that are building upon the advances that we've already achieved. And so I am a technology optimist and a science optimist. But I don't think there's any disputing that we've made a lot of progress and that we'll continue to grow. And so while there may seem to be some kind of bubbles, companies that are perhaps making some promises that they may not deliver, in the grand scheme, so many companies are making progress and moving forward that I think that we will succeed. So that's I'm very excited about the prospect of the near and long-term future for these sectors.
To ask you a question and then turning also to Sydney with this dedicated question. When it comes to change the trajectory of the business model, in fact, of the society, the intensive carbon impact. So to drive it in other way, it's just about piece of market and also engineering and the maturity of the technologies that you have highlighted. What is now, from your perspective, an innovation which is just an incremental innovation, and the other one which is a real disruption? If you have to change, it's about disruption. But disruption is a tricky momentum to make it. Tricky according to the tech, tricky according to the piece of the market to conquest.
So if I understand, you're asking what are the next sort of wave of innovation coming?
Yes, in fact, if there is some trends which are within the innovation, which are only incremental innovation, and what kind of weak or not weak signals that you see there is disruptive technology on the table already there. You just have to scale up. And then we can move in the trajectory.
Sorry. I think, there are many, over the course of the last 20 years, there have been many technologies that the industry has talked about, but it has taken them a long time to achieve that. And so I think what you see happening in energy storage is a good example of that, in that energy storage is very difficult to accomplish. And so many people may say, well, it's taken a long time, but the truth is the chemistries there are very challenging. But I think many companies have achieved that stability. And now we're moving forward in that. And now you see storage, energy storage, not only in electric vehicles, but of course in consumer electronics and our phones. So everything from the tiniest little electronics all the way up to grids. And so that's been really instrumental and disruptive. I would say one of the other sectors that has been much lauded and talked about is hydrogen. And for many, many years, I mean, I think I remember working with a solid state fuel cell company probably more than 15 years ago. But it also has been so difficult to achieve that. But now, even at the Carbon Pricing Conference, we've seen several startups that are focused on that sector. There are, if you're reading the Financial Times, there are massive amounts of hydrogen players, hydrogen projects happening, investors making investment into that sector, which is exactly what needs to happen. So I think hydrogen can be a real game change. And I think the third disruption, which I think is very new, is how do you integrate science and technology advances with the way the world has shifted now to include more equitable access and more inclusive access for everyone in the world, not just in the most expensive and cities like London and Paris and San Francisco. This should be made, these advances should be made available to everyone. And so I think there are some companies that are included in the startups today that are trying to balance the innovation with equity. I think that's a real growth opportunity as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thanks, Caroline. I will be back to Sydney to have his point of view about the key innovations. What is the difference between an innovation as a nice to and a real disruption that we need? Yes, Sydney.
So, innovations can be incremental or innovations can be a step change. Now, if you look at, let's just take the example of carbon capture. A few years ago, carbon capture was a cost center. There was no revenue out of that. You had to just put in money and there was no revenue coming. Then came the concept of extended oil recovery. We'll keep the oil part aside, that it's something which is contributing to the climate change, but just looking at the business opportunity and the innovation part of it, then we looked at the extended oil recovery. And that was one aspect. Subsequently, now in the recent years, you're looking at carbon being captured from flue gas and then getting into concrete. It's getting into different mediums. So it is now being looked at as a resource which can be utilized for some other activity. Basically, when you take a look at it from a 33,000 feet, what you're looking at is the entire circularity is coming into play. And that's where the entire innovation lies. And that's where one has to look at it, even in terms of, we talk about batteries, lithium-ion batteries or whatever. I think today we haven't yet started looking at it from a circular viewpoint. At the end of it, say at the dead end of that battery, there would be some material which would be lying, which needs to be disposed. It will take a little bit of time wherein the design thinking has to come into effect, and circularity has to play a key role in order to look at the entire resources and manage this entire vicious cycle of utilizing and creating one thing and then creating another demon at the end of the day. So that's where the entire innovation will lie in this segment. And I'm not saying that, it's not going to happen. It will happen in due course of time, because the resources are limited, and this entire practice of looking at waste as a value. Today, when you say waste, it's like, okay, let someone else handle it. But if you think, in terms of design engineering and get in circularity into that place, then that waste could be a very strong resource, which can, bring in a lot of innovation. And there's a lot of opportunity to look at commercially deploying these technologies, because it's obviously going to be segment wherein it plays into one entire, kind of a jigsaw puzzle.
Yes.
Gilles?
Thank you. Welcome.
Yes, very, very pleased to have you in this little village by live stream. Yes, I just present our two, how can we say, member of the jury and the co-chair of this first edition of Climate Tech Awards, Caroline Venza, and also Sidney Lobo for the introduction about the innovation. And we are going to align 3 time zones on this dedicated session. Caroline, she's from US, based in California. We are based in Europe, based in Paris, in the Central Europe time, and Sidney Lobo from Mumbai. So a great alignment on the 3 time zone in climate tech. So let's run it like this. And yes, please, Gilles, just introduce yourself. And to run the interview with also Caroline, she will have some key question, and the 2 points that we would like to drive forces and to join forces. Yes, please, Gilles.
Yeah, a few words on me. First of all, I'm not an engineer. That's very difficult when you're working in a space industry. I'm an economist. Second thing, very difficult to understand when you're working in the space industry, because space industry, there is no money, there is only cash to burn. Then that's a difference. And I've worked in biotech in the US, Boston, with the MIT. And I still worked 30 years after this moment in innovation. And I think we are living the same evolution than in biotech industry 20 years ago. Remember biotech at the beginning of the new century, they used to say that biotech is a gadget. The big pharma are too important, too powerful. And they have the opportunity to destroy the new startup into biotech. At the end now, biotech is a key factor for success for the pharma industry, for the developing of new vaccine, for example. That's why I'm very happy to see the same evolution. In 10 years, 20 years, the new startup will be the key factor of the evolution of the space sector.
Thanks, Gilles, for this first introduction. I will let the floor now for Caroline. What could be your first question to Gilles with a very innovative also career from the background to now involving, and is the Director of Innovation, Applied Applications and Science by CNES. So what will be your first question to Gilles?
Gilles, I'm curious about what you're most excited about as our economies sort of come out of COVID and we're seeing alignment on kind of new levels with governments. What would you anticipate is happening next that will be a big game changer?
Yes, I remember when I'm speaking about space industries, the evolution, the game changer. I would always remember what Carl Sagan said. Carl Sagan said 20, 40 years ago. And it's very interesting to read it back. Look again at that dot, talking about the blue planet. That's home, that's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. That's our planet. The first thing is, there is no planet B. Planet B is for people dreaming for a new century. There is no planet B. And then the game changer is perhaps very simple. Space industry, space science, I used to say, is a whistleblower. We say, we monitor this dot, this planet, we show the data, and we say the opinion leader, you have to act now because of the global warming. The new game changer is look at this planet. It's our home, and defend a planet. And space industry is a whistleblower, say, you are in danger. We have to develop a new way of life, a new way to develop the economy. That's really what I mean, and what in Europe we say. It's not the same thing in the US sometimes, but in Europe we say there is no planet B, there is no alternative.
Well, there's no planet B, but exploration needs to happen, right? There are possible opportunities and discoveries to be made in space, as you know, that will benefit the planet. I'm curious what you see as some of the most important advances that space is contributing to right now. Is it Earth imagery as it relates to climate change? Is it sort of the wireless, the access provided by the satellites for communications? What do you think is the most important contribution happening right now?
I think it's Earth exploration. That's Earth exploration, the data on the Earth. Now we know what's happened. Now we have the opportunity to describe what's happened. But of course, when we're talking about exploration, we're talking about perseverance. The eyes of Perseverance, the rover, the US rover on Mars, the eyes are French. And it's quite impressive to see this planet. We are working in Toulouse, where I work, where we have each day, we have the image of the planet Mars, and each day we are driving the rover on Mars. And it's quite impossible to imagine. And when we landed, when the Perseverance rover landed, there is all the people in the room with tears in their eyes. That's so beautiful. But why are we on Mars? Why are we on Mars? Not to discover a new planet, to know where the life begins. Where the life begins. That's an important thing to explore Mars. Not to say we will discover a new planet for our new child. No, it's not for our child, our children. It's not for our children. It's to discover the beginning of the life. And if we discover the beginning of the life, we'll discover the beginning of the life on Earth. That's very impressive. That's why both, we can say Earth observation, exploration, and so on are separated. No, it's the same business. It's the same flow of idea. It's the same flow of science. That's very interesting working on space industry, because we're working on planet, we're working on waves, we're working on people, we're working on telecommunication, we're working on exploration. And exploration, of course, is so beautiful. It's so impressive.
Agreed. Fabrice?
Yes, Caroline. Yeah, it's very interesting to drive this in this way, Gilles and Caroline, with your question and the remark of Gilles that there is no planet B, and the limit that you have drive, Gilles, it's quite not only about investment or tech, it's much more philosophical inspiration, and probably that the key points that drive forces of the key entrepreneurs. Why they wake up on the morning, not only to win a battle game, to take a piece of market and to scale globally, for their investors, or also to have great return by an IPO, for example, or to have a great M&A with a big company. That is not probably the core purpose. It's just to push the limit of the knowledge, in fact. So when it comes with this, I would like to be back to Gilles with this question. So the new space drive forces because it's something which is so powerful. The forces who drive you to wake up in the morning is so powerful to try to touch this limit. When it comes down to Earth, here, so we are in the planet A, and we have to reboot this planet A in a version A prime. We know that if we run it like a planet A, like this, we are going all together to go in the wall. All together. This is my not inspiration, but it's quite mathematical. So we have to try to find solution to be innovative. That is, climate tech is one of the core engine, not only about public policies, but to find a real adaptive solutions. No matter where you live in the world, we are in this session on the morning to say we are in the same boat. And we don't understand that the Earth is our boat, our common boat, to try to find a way and to create a future where the boat will be the same for the people who will be in front of us, the next generation that we used to call. I would like to ask to Gilles, it's only about public-private partnership from the research, from institutions, from scientific, from entrepreneurs, from investors. How can we work all together, dedicated to climate tech, as the emulation who drives the new space? How can we make it apply for the Earth, for this planet A, in a version for climate tech, like versus the force driven by the new space, who could fulfill the climate tech scene because we live here in this planet A?
Two convictions. First one is there is no space industry without public money. In the US, 80% of the development of the space industry is a public money. DARPA, NASA, and so on. This kind of IDAD, Department of Defense. There is no evolution without this public money. What does that mean? That means that the government, we have the tools to develop a new industry for our planet, because it's a public money. That's, first of all, it's a political point of view, it's a political willingness to develop this climate tech and space tech. The second one is no climate tech without space tech. Because the biggest figures coming to monitor the global warming are coming from the space satellites. Very simple. We need the monitoring of satellite to discover what's going on. For example, we are developing what we call a space climate observatory. I think Laurence spoke about this thing this afternoon. What is the space climate observatory? The space climate observatory is a monitor for local authority to monitor the development and the impact of the global warming. And if we are able to monitor the global warming and the consequences on your city, on your river, we're working with River Senegal, we're working with in Vietnam, we're working in Aquitaine, we're working in the US. If we're able to monitor, you are able to mitigate this effect. We're able to develop new policies. Then, the third conviction is we need grassroots project. Of course, we have to develop a very impressive policy to develop climate tech and space tech, but we have to begin with grassroots project. How can I defend my city? How can I monitor my city? Now, that's a very important question. The third are important: political, technical, and philosophical.
Question, some tips, or in case I can add something else. Yes, please, Caroline.
Sorry, commenting on which aspect, Fabrice?
Yes. Could you would like to add something or to ask something to other piece of or another angle to Gilles Robert based on his
Well,
input?
I can speak from the standpoint of what some of our clients are working on when it comes to space. And so what is encouraging to us is that we are seeing many of the innovations that have happened on Earth, including clean energy and clean fuel. Now those are being translated back into aviation. So we have an airplane client that is using electric batteries, that will use electric batteries, and there are also hydrogen-based aviation models that are starting to take shape, as well as some of these CubeSats that will now, instead of using toxic propellant, they'll be utilizing electric batteries. And that will, for the first time, give many of these smaller satellites the ability to navigate. So when we start to talk about space debris and that as a growing problem in space, if we're able to give many of those satellites the ability to deorbit, then we start to solve some of those problems that they've been hard lessons that we've learned here on Earth. So I'm sorry, I don't have Gilles' knowledge from his standpoint. What I learn is from many instances from our clients and the innovation they're working on, but it's exciting to see. And I think it all comes together to contribute towards the same goals.
Sure, I think we need regulation. It's not a bot term. It's not a devil term. You know, in Europe, it's impossible to launch satellite without a policy of deorbiting of satellite. It's a law. It's impossible to launch satellite. That's the way we try to work. It's not the best way in Europe. We are not the king, but that's the way we have to work. If we send something on the planet Earth, on the planet Moon, and so on, you have to think about the consequences for this planet. It's the same thing when we're sending a lander or a rover on Mars. Mm-hmm. We have to take care of the capacity to transport to a virus on Mars could be very interesting. And we are working on mass sample return. That means we are working on the return of Mars stone on Earth. And for example, we have to take care because it could be, I don't know, it's not a science fiction, but it could be very dangerous to have a sample of the stone of Mars. We are working this way. Take care of what you do. Take care of this impact of what you do. And that's very interesting because that's a new way. Deontology is a key factor of the space, of the new space frontier. Take care of the planet, take care of the virus.
Yeah. And I think also just the model for the International Space Station, the cooperation amongst countries on that project. I hope that we will see more opportunities for truly global cooperation when it comes to space. I mean, right now it seems that each country is sort of taking different initiatives, but I hope that all of the countries will follow Europe's lead on these kind of regulations that will ensure that space is that we take a sustainable approach to space, which needs to happen.
Yes, I will ask to thanks Caroline and thanks Gilles for this part. I will ask to Gilles last but not least question. As you are a representative of the French National Space Agency, and to again make a bridge with Caroline from space innovation to Earth application and reverse, from climate tech applications to contribution to space applications. Do you think, Gilles, that now we all talk about net zero all this morning, all these 2 days of the carbon pricing conference. Do you know that it's the time to create a national or much more broader agency, a national climate agency who's going to power all the technologies, all the innovations that we would like to push in the front line?
First important things that we are very happy US are back regarding climate. And
Are we?
it's impossible. It was impossible to work the last 4 years. It was impossible. We need you, US. You need the US scientists. We need the US economy. We need the US sense of development, feeling, endless frontier. We can't develop a space industry without the US. And that's very interesting. Now US are back. Then now we have to develop together. I don't know if it's the agency of an organization of regulation and so on, but with the US now we can work. It's a good for the plan.
Agreed. We're very happy to be back. And since that time, there's been an incredible, just in the last 6 months since January, there's been an incredible change in the level of activity and the optimism here in the US on all of these fronts, including space. So, you know, and I think you see now with the, you know, increase in SpaceX, which in and of itself has a renewable rocket, which I think is often overlooked. But that is a significant advance. There are more companies like Rocket Lab that are also advancing renewable rockets. So I think you see, as we noted, there's, you know, and this is happening in every country, not just the US. So I agree with you, Gilles. It's this cooperation that will get us there faster, and it needs to happen quickly. You know, we've already, you know, the US has been out of the game for the last 4 years. So we have a lot to make up for and a lot to accomplish together.
Sure.
Yes, thanks for this last but not least about connecting deeper in this case, because we are just a decade to make it, not to wait for each 4 or each 5 years to have a reboot on the good alignment between the both side of the triple bottom line. We have just a decade to turn it in the right sense. So thanks a lot, Gilles Rameur, who is the Innovation Director of also Application and Science at the CNES, which is the French National Space Agency. Just stay with us, Gilles, until the 2 nominees we are going to highlight. With also Sidney Lobo, who is part of the meeting of this session, this ceremony. But before going ahead, I would like to send and share with all of us a message from a person which is very impressive. This person is Philippe Croison. Philippe Croison, he is someone who is very impressive. We are very grateful to you, Philippe, to be our honorary president. You inspire by your track records, but what you have achieved, and also the project you still have for the next year and the common month. So it's very impressive, and we will be again very grateful to welcome you and to share your specific message. So for the audience, just hold on and keep in mind that you're going to see what Philippe's going to share with us. The interview has been in native French, according to some stuff, but you're going, if you're a broad audience, to have on the bottom, on the top, on the right, the translation in English to follow up.
déjà, bonjour à tous. Et déjà, je vais commencer par un petit bravo. Bravo à tous d'être présents aujourd'hui parce que ça veut dire que vous avez envie de contribuer à ce changement dont on a besoin, mais vraiment d'une puissance inouïe. Mais alors, qui je suis? Mais alors, waouh! Je suis Philippe Croison. Il y a quelques années, en 1994, j'ai eu un accident avec une ligne électrique. J'ai démonté une antenne de télévision et ça m'a valu l'amputation de mes 4 membres. Et quelques années plus tard, j'avais envie de réaliser des rêves. J'avais envie de changer mon parcours de vie. Et beaucoup de gens n'y croyaient pas. Et pourtant, moi, j'y ai cru. Et je crois qu'on y reviendra tout à l'heure. Mais j'ai cru en mes rêves. J'ai monté des équipes. J'ai osé demander des coups de main. Et j'ai réalisé mon premier rêve qui a changé ma vie, c'est-à-dire la traversée de la Manche à la nage en 2010, en 13h26. Donc, pour prouver à tout le monde que vraiment tout était possible, que l'impossible, c'était juste une seule personne. C'était juste nous. C'est personne d'autre. Merci pour la question. Qu'est-ce que les entrepreneurs doivent changer? Je ne suis pas sûr qu'ils aient besoin de changer quelque chose parce qu'ils ont déjà la conviction au fond d'eux, au fond de leur trip. C'est vraiment ancré au plus profond d'eux-mêmes. Déjà depuis tout petit, ils rêvaient de pouvoir changer la planète, de pouvoir évoluer faire évoluer notre société, pardon. Et je pense que la chose la plus importante aujourd'hui, et ça a commencé déjà depuis quelques années, c'est de communiquer. Et c'est grâce à un événement comme celui-ci, Clean Tech, qu'on va faire évoluer les mentalités. Et je pense qu'il faut faire évoluer les mentalités du grand public. Parce que, effectivement, les dirigeants, tant que le grand public ne bouge pas, les dirigeants sont peinards. Ils disent, OK, en bas, ça ne bouge pas, on est tranquille, on continue comme on a fait jusqu'à maintenant. Et ce qui est assez terrible, je trouve, dans notre société, c'est que pendant des décennies, je dis bien des décennies et des décennies, on a massacré un peu nos planètes, on l'a détruite, enfin, il faut être honnête, quoi, on l'a détruite. Et malheureusement, aujourd'hui, on n'a personne, comment dirais-je, on n'a personne à qui se rattraper pour dire c'est de ta faute. Parce que c'est trop loin. Ça a commencé depuis trop longtemps. Donc aujourd'hui, il faut arrêter de dire c'est de la faute de qui. Même à la rigueur, on s'en fout. C'est trop tard. Donc maintenant, le but, c'est de faire changer les mentalités du grand public et faire évoluer les mentalités de nos politiques et ainsi de suite. Donc, c'est à nous, grâce à cet événement, grâce aux entrepreneurs, qu'on va pouvoir faire évoluer toutes ces mentalités. Et donc, je pense que l'entrepreneur d'aujourd'hui et celui de demain doit communiquer sur ce qu'il fait, expliquer pourquoi il le fait, comment, avec qui. Et voilà, moi, c'est mon sentiment. Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, voilà, il faut laisser tomber le passé. Le passé, c'est trop tard. Maintenant, il faut vraiment se consacrer à aujourd'hui et demain. Pour atteindre la neutralité carbone, je pense qu'il faut que le sport mécanique, c'est un vecteur. C'est un vecteur de communication très, très fort, très puissant, parce qu'on parle à la fois de quelque chose de passionnant pour la jante masculine et aussi un petit peu pour la jante féminine, mais on parle de quelque chose d'impactant. Les gens regardent les compétitions de Formule 1, regardent les 24 heures du Mans, regardent le Dakar, le rallye raid le plus dur du monde. Et c'est à cet endroit-là qu'il faut aller pour leur montrer que la nouvelle technologie, elle existe. Par exemple, je veux retourner sur le Dakar avec un véhicule à hydrogène en 2023. Vous voyez, il y a plein de gens qui m'ont dit, mais non, ça va pas être possible. Je voulais y aller en 2022, effectivement, c'était encore un peu trop tôt. J'y travaille depuis 2017, donc c'est pas un truc qui est arrivé depuis hier. Non, j'y travaille depuis 2017. J'attends que la technologie avance pour pouvoir y aller. Et encore une nouvelle fois, c'est une sorte de communication. C'est de montrer au grand public que aujourd'hui les véhicules à hydrogène, ça fonctionne, même dans le rallye raid le plus dur du monde, et surtout c'est fiable et sécurisé. Si un mec comme moi est capable d'aller sur une aventure comme celle-ci avec un véhicule à hydrogène, c'est pour rassurer le grand public. Déjà d'une, pour me faire plaisir, parce que je pense que il ne faut pas confondre écologie, sauver la planète et brimer les gens. Si on va dans cet univers-là, c'est foutu, on n'y arrivera pas. Les gens ont l'habitude de faire des choses, ont l'habitude de faire des compétitions automobiles, ont l'habitude de faire beaucoup de choses. Et donc, si on leur enlève ça, ils vont être frustrés. Et donc, il ne faut pas enlever cette frustration. Donc, voilà pourquoi j'ai envie de continuer cette épreuve du rallye raid de Dakar le plus dur du monde avec un véhicule 100% propre. Et donc, affaire à suivre en 2023. Là, du coup, je vais utiliser un petit peu mon parcours de vie parce que dans mon parcours de vie, imaginez un mec qui n'a pas de bras et pas de jambes qui veut traverser la Manche à la nage. Je dirais 99% des gens n'y croient pas. Personne ne veut le suivre dans cette aventure. Le mec, c'est un fou. C'est un malade dans sa tête. Et pourtant, lui, il y croit. Et ce gars-là, la première chose que j'ai fait, moi, pour réaliser mon aventure, j'ai osé demander un coup de main. J'ai osé demander des coups de main à des professionnels, ceux qui connaissaient leur métier, ceux qui avaient réussi la traversée de la Manche à la nage, les meilleurs préparateurs physiques, les meilleurs kinés, et ainsi de suite. Et j'ai monté une équipe. Et je leur ai filé le paquet. Et je leur ai dit, transformez-moi. C'est vous les professionnels. C'est à vous de m'emmener à la victoire. Et ils m'ont transformé en 2 ans de temps. Donc le premier truc, c'est oser demander un coup de main. Ne pas vivre le coup de main comme un moment de déshonneur. Vivez-le comme un moment de partage. C'est grâce au coup de main qu'on arrive à atteindre nos objectifs. Et de toute façon, c'est grâce au coup de main et c'est grâce au collectif qu'on va arriver à sauver notre planète et à la faire évoluer et à faire évoluer les mentalités. La deuxième chose, je crois que la résilience. Maintenant, nous, les générations, même les nouvelles générations qui créent des startups, eux, ils savent. Eux, ils savent. Donc, vu qu'ils savent, dans quelques années, on pourra leur faire le reproche. Vous le saviez. C'est à vous de faire le job. Donc, c'est là où c'est assez délicat, c'est là où c'est assez difficile. Et c'est là où je suis très admiratif de ces startups qui se lancent, toute cette jeunesse qui se met en marche pour sauver la planète, pour essayer de trouver des solutions. Donc, je l'ai dit, oser demander un coup de main, la résilience. Et puis, bon, je pense qu'avec la résilience, il y a un truc hyper important, c'est le dépassement de soi. Le dépassement de soi, aller au-delà de ce qu'on croit être capable de faire. Aller au-delà. Donc voilà mes 3 outils à moi qui m'ont permis de réaliser mes aventures là où 99% des gens n'y croyaient pas. Et pourtant, il y a 1% qui y a cru, c'est mon équipe et moi, et on a montré aux 99% de pessimistes que tout était jouable. Oui, on n'est pas loin, on n'est pas loin. Effectivement, il y a toujours… Quand on est aventurier dans l'âme, on est aventurier pour toujours. Et je pense qu'un entrepreneur aujourd'hui, c'est aussi un aventurier. Il fait partie, le gars, c'est un aventurier. Il se lance dans l'inconnu, mais il y croit. Et là, dernièrement, j'ai voulu me lancer dans l'inconnu et c'est vrai que c'est un rêve. Je crois que c'est le rêve de beaucoup de gens d'aller peut-être faire un petit tour dans l'espace. Et donc, j'ai écrit il y a quelques temps à monsieur Elon Musk et qui m'a répondu et qui m'a donné une invitation là au mois de septembre. Donc, rendez-vous à Cap Canaveral début septembre pour voir comment on peut envoyer un mec comme moi qui n'a pas de bras et pas de jambes dans l'espace. Donc, pour un petit voyage de 3 jours, voir la planète d'en haut et se dire waouh, qu'est-ce qu'elle est belle. Franchement, qu'est-ce qu'elle est belle. J'ai envie de le voir de mes propres yeux, quoi. Et de le communiquer, de le faire partager aux gens. Parce que toutes les aventures, moi, que j'ai menées, et je pense qu'un entrepreneur, c'est exactement la même chose, c'est vivre des moments de partage, quoi. Grâce à la réussite, on veut des moments de partage extraordinaires. Et moi, ce que j'adore à chaque fois, dans toutes mes aventures, et j'espère que tous ceux qui sont là aujourd'hui, qui nous écoutent, toutes ces jeunes start-upers, qui vont se dire un jour, se regarder avec toute l'équipe avec qui ils ont travaillé, excusez-moi, je vais dire un gros mot, mais dire putain, on l'a fait, quoi. On l'a fait. Et ça, vraiment, je vous le souhaite de tout cœur, parce que c'est un sentiment, mais vraiment extraordinaire. Entrepreneur un jour, entrepreneur toujours. Hein. Ça c'est aventurier un jour, aventurier toujours. C'est dans notre ADN. Ça, c'est, je pense que on est comme ça parce que malheureusement, notre éducation nous permet pas le rêve. On vit dans une société où on nous interdit de rêver. C'est assez bizarre quand même, hein, contrairement aux anglo-saxons, et surtout aux États-Unis, où le rêve est la religion. Et chez nous, le rêve n'est pas la religion, malheureusement. Et ça, je pense, c'est ce qui freine un peu notre société. Et c'est ce qui freine certains de nos entrepreneurs. Donc, et ce qui freine certainement des jeunes aujourd'hui qui ont des rêves et à qui on a dit, mais non, tu n'as pas le droit de rêver. Il faut que tu fasses attention. Mais attention à quoi? On reste bloqué dans un schéma, bloqué dans le schéma dans lequel on a été éduqué, dans le schéma de c'est pas possible. Alors que notre société aujourd'hui, ce qui est impossible 1 minute auparavant devient possible la minute d'après. Parce que ça va tellement vite, tellement vite. Qui aurait pu imaginer qu'un mec comme moi aurait pu traverser la Manche grâce à de la technologie avec des prothèses super performantes? Qui aurait pu imaginer qu'un mec comme moi puisse faire le Dakar avec un véhicule sans toucher le volant ni les pédales? Vous voyez, qui aurait pu imaginer qu'un mec comme moi, qui suis ouvrier métallurgiste à la base, qui a un niveau scolaire pas très élevé, puisse un jour peut-être aller dans l'espace? Qui? Pas grand monde. C'est ça qui est génial. Et donc, l'espace, c'est sûr que c'est demain. Peut-être qu'on enverra des colonies humaines dans l'espace, mais j'espère. Oh non, j'espère pas, j'en suis sûr, que ce qu'on a fait avec notre planète, ça va nous servir de leçon. Et que quand on va partir dans l'espace ou qu'on va aller s'implanter soit sur la Lune ou soit sur Mars, qu'on ne reproduise pas les mêmes bêtises. Qu'on sache à ce moment-là dire, OK, nos ancêtres ont été pas terribles. Ils étaient ignorants en plus, hein, parce que nos ancêtres étaient ignorants. Tous ceux qui ont pollué la planète depuis des décennies étaient ignorants. Enfin, ignorants oui et non, hein, mais c'est une autre discussion. Ça peut être un long débat de plusieurs heures. Mais ouais, je pense qu'il faut faire attention à ne pas reproduire les mêmes bêtises. Et pour en finir avec la jeunesse, ce que j'expliquais tout à l'heure, et ce que tu as expliqué aussi, avant le coronavirus, on a déjà vu un changement de notre jeunesse qui commençait à se révolutionner en disant non, c'est pas notre société, c'est pas la planète qu'on veut, quoi. Donc, et il y a eu le coronavirus. Et on a vu cette souffrance de ces jeunes étudiants, de cette jeunesse qui a dit mais bon Dieu de bonsoir, mais c'est pas possible. C'est à nous de prendre les choses en main. Et donc je l'espère. Vous qui êtes là aujourd'hui, c'est à vous de prendre les choses en main. C'est à vous de révolutionner les choses. C'est à vous de nous mettre dehors et de dire ok, vous avez merdé, nous on va prendre le relais maintenant. Avec nos startups, avec nos idées, avec nos rêves, et on va les réaliser. Et on va vous montrer que tout est possible encore une nouvelle fois. Donc voilà, ça c'est vraiment le message que j'ai envie de délivrer, parce que surtout, dépêchez-vous parce que j'ai envie de le voir de mon vivant, donc à vous de jouer.
C'est vrai, merci beaucoup Philippe déjà de ton temps. Merci d'avoir accepté d'être le parrain, je dirais, de cette première édition des Climate Tech Awards. Et également, je dirais, tu résumes tout. Aujourd'hui, on est dans un championship où c'est un travail d'équipe. On n'a pas d'adversaire, on est tous coéquipiers. La seule compétition qu'on a, c'est nous et puis la nature, comment elle va accepter qu'on puisse avoir une vie assez soutenable dans les années à venir, et l'impact qu'on va avoir et les solutions techniques qu'on va pouvoir inventer, vont pouvoir essayer d'y contribuer. Mais je dirais effectivement, c'est dans ce championship, essayons de ne pas être adversaires de la nature, mais coéquipiers aussi avec elle. Encore merci beaucoup, Philippe.
Avec grand plaisir. Avec grand plaisir.
De ton témoignage. Pour toutes celles et ceux qui comprennent ou qui comprendront, et puis même, je dirais, pour les plus sceptiques, je te laisse repartager à tous le message, comme quoi que…
Ouais, comme quoi tout est possible, que l'impossible, c'est juste nous, c'est personne d'autre, c'est vraiment que nous. Après, on peut reprocher à 3 milliards de personnes de ne pas avoir atteint notre objectif, mais la seule personne qui prend les décisions, c'est nous. Donc, à vous de prendre les bonnes décisions. C'est vrai qu'on ne vit pas dans un monde de bisounours, c'est vrai qu'on vit dans un monde économique très compliqué. Il y a une guerre en permanence économique et que malheureusement, l'environnement passe très, très souvent au second plan de cette guerre. Mais j'espère que vous allez nous bousculer. Mais vraiment, je souhaite du fond du cœur que vous… Voilà, excusez-moi, mais c'est la parole d'un rêveur. C'est la parole d'un rêveur, c'est la parole d'un citoyen de cette planète qui rêve que cette jeunesse nous bouleverse et nous montre la voie. Donc, merci à vous. Et bravo pour cet événement, encore une fois.
I'm going to be back now with one of our jury member, Sydney Lobo. Sydney, if you are here.
Yep.
Yes, great. So we are going to have the return of the video by your side. Sydney, I'm just waiting to the technique. If they could make Sydney on the screen. Sydney Lobo. Just hold on. Or back to probably Caroline. Caroline, you stay there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. So perfect. Probably we're going to be back to Caroline just to check with the tech side. Is it okay for the tech side? We can switch to Caroline?
Great. Yes, with Caroline, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Great from here.
Okay. Yes, probably to run it with also Sydney. to have a smart discussion about the candidates that you have received their, how can we say, the profile, have a look on their website, what's their market, their product, and what have you noticed in this first batch of early stage climate techs, and just to make a dialogue between the jury and to share it in the live stream.
Yeah, so when looking at all these different technologies, there are different aspects that I looked at. One was, okay, is there a USP that they bring to the table? What is the opportunity for globalization, or in terms of global application? What is also the impact that this technology is going to have? What is the flexibility and the versatility of this technology in different geographies? Are there opportunities to look at cost minimization? Is there a possibility to actually address the issue of what we are all looking at? It's just that, he and myself, we look a little similar, except that I'm wearing glasses and he's not wearing glasses. So that's otherwise we look similar in terms of, this part. Yeah. So those, these are some of the aspects that I look at in terms of the technology, and also in terms of how sustainable is the business model. It should not be something like a science project, or it should not be something like it depends on some kind of a support system. It has to be a sustainable business model so that it can stand on its own feet. And obviously, these startups need to kind of get into the commercial space. They want to get into business. They also want to make money. So one has to look at all these aspects in order to see how a technology or a startup has to be determined that it has a value to be pursued.
And the great signal toward climate techs, you have noticed.
I was saying I agree with everything Sydney pointed out. Is it's important for these startups to not only think about what is happening in this moment, but to look at a longer scale, a longer term vision into how they could scale globally, what their IP set is, if it's defendable, what kind of impact ultimately these technologies will have. It was interesting to note, as I pointed out earlier, that several of the startups are focused for the first time, I think, on coupling sort of innovation at a global scale while also trying to solve some of these very local issues that are happening in countries like Africa. And that was, I think, those market opportunities I hope will grow. But I think also, what I find with a lot of companies and with some of these startups as well is a real focus on the technology or the science breakthrough, where the business model itself could needs to be evolved somewhat to sort of meet what the goals are of the company.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and for you both, for VCs, they have and they like to have text everything, but before this, we have just highlighted some companies which are not directly connected or native based on the tech, but they have scale by implementing their solution to have an impact toward communities. So the question is, how can the VCs part who know how to scale by techs could fulfill those projects who have already a great impact, but just to scale by the layer of the tech, but it's not natively constructed like this. So what could you suggest for those companies? And what could you suggest also for the VCs who sees those projects to say, probably it's not in my core thesis or investment, but I've noticed that there is relevant things, very deep, very impactful, it's already running, and the way to scale is different, but there is no tech layer directly connected. How can we highlight this point? Because there is a value indeed.
I think as more venture and capital start to invest in impact projects and impact-focused companies, I think many of these companies are trying to, or many of the VCs are coming up with their own formulation on how you, as you know, sort of how you measure and balance the impact of the innovation. And that's really been their primary focus, is what the ROI is. But I think increasingly the impact investors are starting to come up with their own calculations of how you then measure not only the impact of the innovation, but that impact on the local economy, on the growth of those regions for the future, on how that growth will attract more talent and more energy back into those areas. And so, for instance, one of our clients, Clean Energy Ventures, has come up with a calculation that it just shared. It was sort of an open calculation for other investors to use when trying to evaluate what a startup's impact will be. It's more on the greenhouse gas emissions, but I think that as we see more combinations of sort of innovation with the equitable access and local access, hopefully some of these impact investors will start to come up with models that they can share on how others can utilize that to grow startups out of that. But I'm not sure, perhaps Sydney probably has a better answer for what's happening there.
Thanks. And I would like also to ask to Sydney the question, which is the bridge question also. We used to speak about high tech. Surely that in space we just talk about high tech. And on the startup scene we speak about tech or disruptive tech. What about the low tech? Because low tech is also powerful. Low tech could also fulfill our commitment and probably easier to scale with less impact also in damage. I would like to ask you what could be your point of view, Sydney, with the in fact unestimated of the low tech contribution when it comes to climate tech.
So let me put it this way. How do we define low tech, high tech, or extra high tech? I mean, the way we look at it, I mean, just someone who knows a little bit of science and knows a little bit of how to balance equations and all that. If it's highly complex set of equations and, a lot of algorithms required, then we say that it's high tech. If it is, okay, a little bit of social and a little bit of mathematics involved, then we'll say it's mid tech. If it does not involve all these equations, then we'll call it as low tech. At the end of the day, whether it's high tech, low tech, medium tech, one has to look at what is its impact. The level of technology or the level of high, medium, low is, I think it's not something which is defined. It's the prerogative of the individual, the way he or she is looking at it. Even, for example, let's just take a straightforward example of creating a green sink. Okay, just planting trees. There is nothing high tech in it. Okay, it's, someone has to look at the species, look at the soil, look at the conducive environment, the saplings, etc. Take good care of it as if you're taking care of a baby. There's no high tech in it. But look at its impact. I mean, once that green sink starts growing, it starts sequestering so much amount of carbon. Okay, so there is no there's no mathematics and equations and hardcore engineering and process and all those kind of things involved in that. It's just water, sunlight, and the tree does its thing. So it's absolutely low tech, which has been done since donkey's years. So it's the impact that one has to look at in terms of saying that what is the impact this technology has. The more high tech it is, the more complexity there is. And, you know, as even Giles pointed out, that, you know, space is always funded by the government and things like that. Why? Because it is so high tech and it's so complex. So when it's more high tech and more complex, you have more resources to be put in. And then, I mean, obviously the venture capitalists or whoever you may say, they will obviously look back and say, hey, where's my return on investment? You know, so that's the kind of way one has to look at its impact and then go back and see whether it's worth it.
Yes, thanks, Sidney. I would like to ask to Gilles Ramin, the Director of Innovation, Application and also Science by the CNES, which is the French National Space Agency. A last but not least question for you, Gilles. You still there, Gilles?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, great. So when it comes to, we just deal about high tech, low tech, and impact. In fact, when we want to make impact, do you think that we could drive like a task force or an initiative from space to Earth, and also from developed country to countries who have to support the adaptation of the climate, the mitigation of the climate, but they have not the agency, not the task force, the engineering to make it happen. Do you think that we could drive also initiative from tech transfer from these countries or region of the world to adapt, because net zero is not a part of the world. The world has to be net zero itself.
Yes, I will give you a small story. We're working with Ghana, which is an African country. And of course, we are coming with our computer, laptop, and so on. And we landed in the middle of nowhere. And the people developed nanosat. Yes, nanosat, without power, without internet connection, without 3D printing. And it was very interesting, because we have learned a lot of these people, because we have a lot of investment, we have a lot of money, and regarding these people, our results are not so different. That's, for me, the question is inspiration, and the question is the capacity to develop an ecosystem. Regarding space industry, what is, in my opinion, what is the key question? The key question is not satellite on orbit. The question is data scientists. We need data scientists on Earth. We need African data scientists, because if we have data scientists, we can use satellite. So satellite is not so complex now. We can develop 70 countries develop their own satellite. That is not a problem. The problem is to have data, to analyze data. We need data scientists, in a word. And that's a key question. If you have data scientists, you can analyze data. If you can analyze data, we can monitor the global warming effect.
For sharing this with all of us. And yes, I think that you have to
okay.
Yes, to see in a other session. So welcome you again for discussing and driving these forces
Fabrice,
for the climate.
On mute.
Yeah,
I think
you're
okay.
on mute.
We are.
The organizer is on mute. Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay? Do you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, you.
Yes, we would like to thank you, Gilles, to your participation, to also share this point of view, and just to drive forces from space to Earth and reverse when it comes to climate and net zero issues. And yes, probably have a smart discussion after the special conference and the awards. So thanks again, Gilles, and see you next.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Now let's back to another session within the panel and the special ceremony of Climate Tech Awards. It's also about driving forces in another way, driving, let's say, finance in another way. And for it, we are going to highlight something which is very interesting. We just discussed it this morning and the afternoon also about carbon offsetting mechanism. And with this, to try to find a way to align those capital by carbon credit or offsetting. Also, not only to make a commitment and a good accountability on the 3 layer, but also to drive this capital to fulfill the innovation that we would like to happen. The innovation we would like to be in our daily life to make much more, less carbon intensive natively. So I'm very pleased to have with me Céline Grillet. Céline, I'll let you introduce yourself, and just to say before that Céline, she is also an ambassador of the Carbon Pricing Conference. Yes, please, Céline.
Okay, thank you, Fabrice, for inviting me at the conference, and congratulations to all the team for the organization. So I'm going to speak now about carbon offsets, because this is one of the topics which will be tackled during the working groups of the Net Zero Coalition. Just so before explaining why, what is carbon offsetting and why we are going to tackle this topic within the framework of the Net Zero Coalition, I'm going to briefly introduce myself. So I'm Céline Grillet. I've been working in sustainable finance for a few years now, mainly in the asset management industry, and I'm currently ambassador of this conference in parallel with my job. So just to start, we can maybe remind what's carbon offsetting. So carbon offset broadly refers to a reduction in CO2 emissions or an increase in CO2 storage that is used to compensate for the emissions that couldn't have been avoided. There is a distinction to be made between regulatory and offsetting and voluntary offsetting. The first one is carried out via a market that concerns specific industries and companies whose emissions have been capped within the framework of an international regulation such as the Kyoto Protocol of 1997. On the other hand, the voluntary carbon offset is voluntary, as you can guess it, and it is dedicated to all kinds of actors, individuals as companies, who just want to compensate for their emissions by financing a project that sequesters CO2 or just reduces CO2 through land restoration, for example, or through the planting of trees. The question we can ask is why carbon offsets? Why offsetting carbon? So that's actually today carbon offsets faces with some limits. Commitments of net zero alignments are not easily implemented in some industries or in some companies. That's basically the case of the cement or the steel industries, because these materials are crucial to our economies, but we still don't know how to produce them without emitting that much CO2. That's a key problem, because even if innovations today enable to produce them with less CO2, they are not yet prepared to be industrialized and to be developed at a large scale. So that's in this context that the need for carbon offsetting as a reason. And so we can ask, is it a good tool actually to fight against climate change? Actually, currently carbon offsets are facing with much criticism. Some people are saying that carbon offsets are just considered as a good excuse to not change anything to the core of our economies and our business models, and is just a way to continue business as usual. Furthermore, there is also critics on the ability of carbon offset to actually deliver the carbon benefits they promise. Currently, the carbon offsetting market is unregulated and is consequently wide open to fraud. That's the reason why it's quite difficult, and even the most well-intentioned shames of carbon offsetting are put into question because of the limits of because of different limits. There is, for example, among this limit, the lack of accuracy in emission assessments. Today, we still have difficulty to accurately measure Scope 3 emissions because they lie outside the company's operations. There is also a problem with permanence because if you plant a tree, for example, it's difficult to be guaranteed that this tree will not be cut or be burnt in the future. So because of all these limits, carbon offsetting is criticized. Fortunately, there are some initiatives that have been launched to face with these limits. There is the Net Zero Alliance, but also more recently, some academics from Oxford have launched the Oxford Carbon Offsetting Principles, which give some guidelines to the users of carbon offsets so that to be efficient. They, for example, prone to use carbon offsets which use carbon removal technologies with long-term storage. But beyond these issues of carbon offsets efficiency, there is more widely speaking an issue related to the mathematical reasoning which is behind carbon offsetting. Indeed, nature doesn't obey to mathematical laws. There are some chain effects which are not taken into account by carbon offsets. You can plant trees or you can use carbon removal technologies to compensate for your emissions, but you will never recover the environmental damages that you have caused. I will take to illustrate an example that I quite well know because with the Mont Blanc, because I was born very close to the Mont Blanc, and so the valley just at the bottom of the Mont Blanc is very polluted. It's one of the most polluted areas in France. Because of this pollution, the iced sea has dramatically melted over the past few years. A company of this area can plant trees or use carbon removal technologies, but we will never find back the iced sea that we have lost. So I think carbon offsetting is a good solution to fight against climate change when it is well done, but it's not sufficient to fight against climate change. That's very crucial to not forget that the first carbon offsets are those provided by nature, the natural assets, and that's very important to protect biodiversity. And fortunately for us, current regulation in Europe and even in France more recently are going in this way. So this topic, this fascinating and challenging topic, which will be tackled within the framework of the Net Zero Coalition. So I just want to end by saying let's join the Net Zero Coalition for next move.
Yes, thanks Céline for sharing this piece of work, which is probably sometimes technical for some points according to the mechanism behind the carbon offsettings, but that is true that there is a great challenge now. If we would like to move forward the limit to be net zero, we have to move forward the limits of the technical points also. That's why I'm very pleased to have you discussing on this topic, because this is what is the back end of scene of the real material we work on to drive forces and to create an ecosystem. And that is allow me to just speak very briefly about the Net Zero Coalition, what it is. It is very simple. The Net Zero Coalition is about embedding all parties, from public and private organizations and from also people. Net Zero Coalition, it's about, indeed, let's say, the new citizenship to be net zero. You can be corporate, public institution, what is your piece of work to be net zero today? You can be a person, an individual, or an NGO. You also have to be to embed in this net zero era. That is all about this net zero coalition. We prefer to talk about citizenship rather talking only technical points. But it doesn't mean that there is no technical issue within to be net zero. That is all we're going to talk about, but not only about talking. Net zero coalition, it's an open do tank to drive forces from people who know, people who do, and people who have to embed in the change management. In fact, to be net zero is a massive hackathon, open hackathon of the world. Any territories, no matter where you are, no matter where you live, you have to drive forces from your territory to your neighbor, and the neighbor of your neighbor is, again, probably your neighbor. Don't forget that the Earth is round, the Earth is not flat. If we have to be net zero, there is no frontier to be net zero. In the same task, we have to drive the innovation. Net zero is powerful by startups indeed. We want to drive the processes in a complementary way that probably the much more administrative processes. Why? Because as we said before, and also indeed you highlight, Sydney, that the time is running. So time is running, we have to drive forces in another processes. Startups are very well placed to drive things and make things achieved in a fast-track momentum. And then it doesn't mean that we don't embed also big organizations. We have to help them to find a way, to find a road, to identify where are the innovation, and to work together like an open innovation, not only an open do tank, but an open innovation for businesses, because it's all about implementing the innovation. There is no way that the innovation stay on the table and not scale in the good sense that we would like to drive. It's all about this. Net Zero Coalition, it's about citizenship of the world, of the net zero era.
Please proceed to gate number 5 for immediate boarding.
We are back here and on stage with also my co-chair, Dr. Elizabeth Janikowski-Loriol. So very, very impressive, Philippe, and again, very congratulations on what you have done. And so also very grateful of your time sharing, and indeed the content of the time sharing. That you push not only the frontier, but you put on the table all the things that we have to embed daily in whatever, if you are a startup, if you are an investor, if you are an NGO, or if you are working in the public institutions, if you are only a citizen. That is all about of the world. Thanks, Philippe, and we are very impressive and grateful for your acceptability to be our first honorary president for this edition. I would like now to go back to Sin and also to now have another time attention is according to the two nominees. We have tailor-made a batch of very small startup and an early stage, and we have decided to nominate two ones with a crossing view. The two ones we are going to highlight, and I'm going to tell them and to tell with you the two names. But before saying this with all the audience, probably to let Sydney and also Caroline have a smart input on it. And yes, please, Caroline.
Well, I don't want to give it away
Yes,
before you announce it.
Yes, about the input that you were going to drive for the nominees after they are going to be awarded.
I see. Yes, sorry. So our group, because we specialize in helping early stage companies achieve brand awareness and attract capital and customers, we will be providing the two winners with a strategy session in which we'll discuss what the company needs to achieve in the next 12 to 24 months in order to see success and scale its company. And then we will work with them to provide an outline and a plan in order to achieve that. And we'll be working with them closely on creating that plan together to meet their goals. And certainly are willing to work with those companies beyond that to see how we can support their efforts. So we're happy to contribute to that, and happy to be a part of the Carbon Pricing Conference.
And we are also happy by our side to welcome you and to push also to help pushing the frontiers for the startups and indeed for the two nominees. I would like now to welcome again Sydney Lobo, who is a representative from the jury member.
Yeah, in terms of working with these, I mean, although we've narrowed down, two startups, I think the way I would like to work with them, or I will work with them, is ask them the tough questions, because somewhere they need to think about it. And typically, what happens with startups is they tend to kind of move out like starfish in different directions. So you need to harness them and bring them on a path wherein they could quickly commercialize. So working with them to look at what is their business model, what is, have they looked at the customer, what is their competitive advantage, who are they competing against, and, what are they bringing to the table? Plus, how can they commercialize, or how can they, because technologies could be great, but if they're made of gold and platinum, nobody's going to buy them. But, how can you make it economical, and how can you make it conducive enough that it meets the customer's requirement? These are areas that I've worked with, worked in myself and developed things. So it'll be a great pleasure to work with these guys in, and helping them to look at these aspects if they've not done or if they've not looked at it.
For adding your piece of add value within the jury, and indeed now with the program that Climate Tech Venture, who is the co-organizer of the Carbon Pricing Conference, the CPC, and the first edition of the Climate Tech Awards, we are going to propose to the two nominees an acceleration program, which is going to tailor-made in 3 layers. The first one is to bridge the gap, to accelerate on the tech side. First of all, because it's all about the maturity of the technology, and the second layer will be about the acceleration of business development, because it's all about to have a good market fit. When we come with this, it could take time. So it could take time and money. We're going to scale also the second and the third layer according to the funding acceleration. That is what we're going to offer during this smart, very accelerating program for the 2 nominees. And now I'm going to name the 2 ones Climate Techs for this first edition on the Climate Tech Awards. And we're going to be back to all of you and back to you too. So the first nominee is Mitero, a company which has been highlighted and by Crossing View within the jury. And the second one is CO2 Energy, CO2 like SIIO2 Energy. It's not a joke, but it's a ringing, very, very impressive according to the Carbon Pricing Conference, CO2. So very, very interesting, not only about the naming and the title, but the content of the company. So congratulations, Mitero, congratulations, CO2 Energy. We're going to be close to you very soon now. And congratulations all the candidates, the Climate Techs who has applied to this from different parts of the world, different layers and applications during this momentum by the Climate Tech venture. Just to talk a lot of you about this. We are designing an investment thesis which is very simple. We have 7 to 8 categories, where there is also a special one on carbon capture and storage. We have talked a lot and have a dedicated session during the conference. And for this, we have a real willingness and modus operandi not to say now this is just to make a ticket or to bet on a company. It's also about making. Sometimes VCs don't feel like a maker. They said, okay, we have to be on one side of the table and there is the maker and there is the entrepreneurs. For our side, particular, when it comes with climate tech, if you don't understand the technical background and the issues connected to the issue, you just probably spread money on, you spend money, but you spread money probably with a probability of return investment, but the probability, sometimes there is many ways of startup and many ways in the portfolio. So it's not about betting now, it's about making the commitment to be net zero practical. If you would like to be practical, our investment thesis is very clear. You are also to be not full stack a maker, but you are also a part of a maker. So by Climate Tech Venture, it's a real bridge with a 2 engine. The first is surely to be like a maker, like an accelerator program, and then fulfilled by capital, because surely that capital will save you resource and fulfill you the money you have to stand up before the time market fit. So with this, we are very, very pleased to have you two, Sydney Lobo from Mumbai and Caroline Venza from US based in California. And we are going to synchronize for all of you, the 2 nominees, the 3 time zone that you are going natively to scale in 3 time zone. So congratulations, all of you. Congratulations for our 2 nominees. And I will let the floor to my co-chair, Dr. Isabelle Czernikowski-Loriol, to end the conference, and after just sharing with you a smart message. Yes, please.
Okay, so we had a very intense 2 days for this conference. Many very interesting discussions, very interesting views, a lot of material we can bring with us to let's start very concrete actions to reach net zero. So I want to thank a lot our 2 honorary presidents, Jean Jouzel and Philippe Croizon. I want to thank the sponsors and the partners who accompanied us for preparing the conference. I want to thank the panelists and also the applicants to the awards. It's really great to see all their innovation, all what they have in mind that can be very, very relevant and very helpful. I wish to thank the audience that followed the Carbon Pricing Conference from all over the world. And also I want to thank the organization team present here in BRGM offices in Paris. So thank you for attending the conference. And now, Fabrice, you have the final words.
Yes, I'm trying to be brief, but it could be, I hope it will be smart, but I would like to share some messages before ending this conference. We have discussed during 2 days in such amazing series of roundtables in different angles, from the financial industry, for the energy industry, for the tech side with the entrepreneurs, and also for the public policies side, to put all this piece in the same block, because we have to discuss all together to find the good way. For my closing remark, I would like to say that it will be an amazing mix of keynotes, tailor-made messages, talks, fire chat, roundtables, and all indeed a speed demo and some pitches. Here we have designed like a common portfolio of tips during these 2 days. It has been powered by like a stock exchange of crossing view, like the bridge behind you, Caroline, and also all our distinguished speaker and all our audience. We have supposed to try to move lines in the right direction. Now let's try designing the new ways of thinking. Let's opening the pathway now for action. As we live in a massive volume of information, you know, the detail is important, and the data details much more now. When it comes to carbon accounting, when it comes to biodiversity footprint. From the private and public sector, both are connected, both are linked in the same goal today, converging to achieve the net zero target just in 1 generation. Now, if the retro plan is clear, the mid-century, with 2 roadmaps to align in the process, the why is quite understood better today. The Paris Agreement is a testimony of it. But the agenda is still on the table, but it seems also in sometimes too heavy to turn the page by the cost of the transformation that we need from the carbon-intensive model where we are today. President Biden just said a few months ago that the green, let's say like the sustainable plan or New Deal, will fulfill unexpected new jobs. And these jobs don't yet exist. I hope and I do believe that all the climate techs will fulfill the new jobs that we need, aligned with the climate goals. But the how behind net zero is in the air. And the signals identified are not at the level of the constraint also identified. Will it be done by a shock, like the COVID, covering our daily time attention today? Will it be in trouble, avoiding maximum Gilets jaunes effect, avoiding internal instability when we have to implement the good policies? Will it be the painful result through more complex misunderstanding between or within geo-economic zone? Will it be by opening a new generation of treaties, of international trade agreements, powered by the Paris Agreement itself? Is it also an era of new cooperation to achieve this same Paris Agreement? Or will we turn sometimes in much more protectionism? But to put the carbon value both by a market or markets, by a tax, or either by designing, if you are a private company, an internal carbon price to anticipate the future generation of the net zero regulation, which is not yet set, it's only on the voluntary approach today. Let's connect the two boards from the boardrooms of decision in organizations to the boardrooms of the civil society, the democracy, and reverse. So as behind our own daily job, no matter if you are entrepreneurs, again, if you are VCs, if you work in the public institution, all together, we are all connected in this simple question. Do you believe enough, like Philippe Croizon, our honorary president, said, to challenge the impossible? It seems to be impossible on the paper. Within your institution, within your structure, within your investment thesis if you are an investor, within your process, within yourself, how all of this peace contribution has to be set and by who? We don't know yet. But we have to drive forces in the two ways, from regulation to incentivizing the new quality of asset that we need, from societal support to new technologies investment batch with a long-term view, from the past to the future, from our lifestyle today to another lifestyle tomorrow. To be acceptable, carbon pricing is indeed about citizenship. And to be implemented, it's about new responsibility, but new constraint also. What must be this new citizenship? What would be the new norms of tomorrow? Being net zero is neither an option, neither a lux for happy few. It has to be mainstream today. But the transformation starts by designing a higher carbon price from implementation. So the second question is what we call a fair and inclusive transition. That it means who will support the effort? Oriented from a public decision to a private implementation, it will be powerful both individually and collectively. I would like to close this amazing round, amazing up to momentum, preparing the Glasgow Convention of Parties in next November. Because this special conference is a result of an unexpected technological meeting 1 year ago, much more than 1 year ago, with my co-chair, Dr. Isabelle Tchernikovsky-Loriol, my emeritus co-chair of the CPC, where I discovered indeed, for the first time, just much more than 1 year ago, the potential of the carbon capture and storage technologies. Without knowing nothing about this, just 1 year ago, and when I was discussing this with one of the key international pioneers, I don't know that Isabelle is one of these when dedicated to carbon capture and storage. So, Isabelle, I can tell you directly, with your practical willingness during all these months, your expertise, your continuous courage, your real holistic approach we have designed to help us keep ahead all the trickiness, all the precision at the last minute until the last minute to converge for our common issue. So I'm very grateful for you and very also grateful to our two honorary presidents, Professor Jean Jouzel, indeed, and Philippe Croizon, our honorary president of the Climate Tech Awards. Now, I'm running Climate Tech Venture and supporting 8 application segments, surely including carbon capture and storage as a part of our investment thesis. We would like to thank you also all our editorial committee by their contribution to fulfill all the sessions preparation, our sponsors, starting from the BLGM, where we are today, MC2, represented by Caroline Venza. Thanks, Caroline. B0 Carbon, represented by Tommy Rickett, and also Standard & Poor's Global, represented by Rick Lorne.
Club CO2.
And also the Club CO2 represented, indeed, which is the very, very first, the pioneer also of the sponsorship, represented by Dr. Florence Del Prajano. I would like also to thank our partners, the French Academy of Technology. Thanks, Dominique Vignon, for being with us and moderating the first session on the carbon pricing. The Carbon Disclosure Project represented by Jérôme Tarasca and IFP Énergie Nouvelle, also a very thanks to you all. All thanks also to our organization team to keep their implication to make it today until also the last minute, but we try to share with you all a piece of work to push the frontiers now, converging different generations in the same way. We can see from here we are the Statue of Liberty that reminds us today that involving in the net zero era, it's about keeping the liberty, preserving the liberty through also new constraints. And the good news, as we said, is that those constraints could be also the most powerful opportunity for all generations to turn it in another way, to turn it fairly and in the right sense. So, thanks again for following us. It's just the beginning. Thanks again, all the audience, and keep tuned. See you next.